Hello, I'm Robert Scoble, and you're watching WorkFast TV, which is about how the internet is changing work. The show is supported through the generous support of SAP. SAP provides software that helps both large and small businesses manage their business, lower their costs, and bring more services to their business relationship partners. Thank you to SAP for supporting social media and this show. My guest today is Erik Larson. He's the Director of Marketing and Product Management for the Business Productivity Business Unit at Adobe, and we'll be talking about Adobe's view of the online world today. Erik, welcome to WorkFast.
Thank you very much.
And you're working on Acrobat.com, right?
That's right, yeah.
Which is real interesting. Let's talk about the generations of Adobe users, because I started using Adobe back in the mid-'80s when we got a laser printer at West Valley Community College, which had Adobe page description software loaded on it. And
sure.
We got a few Adobe fonts. Man, I remember back then it was fun to collect fonts, and then we had Aldus PageMaker, which now is Adobe bought Aldus and turned that into InDesign, right?
That's right, yeah.
And back then, though, I learned Adobe Illustrator, which was an art program. Mm-hmm. Back then, though, when we handed out work, we didn't have email. we didn't have collaborative software, and so if I handed a designer a task, he or she would sit and just work solitarily, alone. And then, you know, in the 90s, email came out, and we started emailing those things around and started collaborating a little bit like that. And today we have like Acrobat.com, which lets you work at the same time with somebody else, right?
Right.
Tell me what you think about, because we were talking before the camera started about these generations and what you're noticing about the different age of users and
sure.
their experience, and what you're seeing some trends, I guess.
Yeah. So there was actually an academic study done that compared use of Word and Google Docs and Buzzword, which is the collaborative online word processor. It's part of Acrobat.com. And had large numbers of students in an academic environment using those products to get work done together as a group.
Yeah.
And there's lots of interesting things that came out of it. One is that if you stack rank those products in terms of the quality of the output of the group of people, Buzzword was at the top.
Really?
And the reason for that is that people used more media or more different ways to communicate information within it, more pictures and tables and whatnot, and also the clarity of thought. It was easier for the group of people to sort of combine their thoughts and ideas into a document, followed by Google Docs, and last was Word, which is interesting. And this was specifically a collaborative group of people. And another big finding out of that was that there was a distinctive difference depending on the age of the person. This is not meant at all to be some sort of ageist statement. I think it's more of a demographic statement. And my hypothesis is that, and the split was at about 34 years old. And my hypothesis about that is that that's around the time when people were going to college and using email at college. So my undergrad was MIT. I used email like crazy. I graduated in '92, so I was probably on the earlier edge of that.
Yeah.
But by the mid-'90s, pretty much everybody in universities was using email. Kind of like pretty much everybody in universities a few years ago was using Facebook.
Yeah.
And so in that generation there of email users, they have a very particular type of pain. They're used to collaborating with other people through email. They think they should be able to do it, but they're still using the same desktop authoring products or publishing products like you were talking about, like Word or InDesign back in the day. And so because of that, they have this intense problem, which is universal. Like there are a lot of companies trying to do what Adobe is doing with Acrobat.com, Microsoft and Google, Cisco, IBM, go down the list. All the big software companies and dozens of startups here in Silicon Valley and around the world funded by forward-looking venture capitalists. And they're trying to solve this problem that everybody has, which is email is terrible for collaborating on documents.
Let's talk about why it's terrible, because there's a bunch of different ways to look at it. When I left NEC, I left 1.5 GB of email. After just working there a year, right, I had collected 1.5 GB of email. And that was after throwing away the spam and throwing away useless stuff.
Yep.
And a good quarter of it was actually really useful to the corporation.
Sure.
It should have been left around for other people to take over my job and have a bunch of resources. You know, it was even things like server names that you might need to know, or SAP keywords that you needed to know to find things.
Yep.
And all that was lost to both me because I couldn't look at it, and lost to the corporation, right? Because they couldn't look at it. They shut off my email account, gone.
Right.
And none of that data was left around. Where if you get stuff out of the email stream and put it into, you know, one of these collaborative tools, it's around for other people even after you leave the company.
That's right.
But the other thing is, if we're working collaboratively, like I used to run a magazine or help run a magazine, I was an associate editor, and we would, you know, email back and forth these PageMaker documents, you know, and
version 1, 2, 12,
or
25.
a pointer to them on the FTP server, right?
Yep.
And you would go back and forth, and that worked okay when there was 2 people. But if you have 10 people working on a project, these emails you can quickly build up to 200 emails around a project. Right?
Exactly, and if you think about, so in this study, this age difference, the big distinction was how people used both Buzzword and Google Docs to work together. So if you were younger than 34, you were most likely to share the document when it was barely even started.
Yeah.
And then use the document as the way that you're going to collaborate. You put comments in there, and Buzzword has a great facility for that. I'll show you that later. You didn't have to worry about version control. It was just all right there. Whereas the folks that were older tended to do their work themselves. They didn't get input, and then they would email it around, or they didn't quite think that, oh yeah, there's all these people out there that I'm going to have to work with. Let's just get started. So big distinction. And I think that, you know, as you're talking about email, the problems of email, if you think about it from the organization standpoint, there's all this stuff in there that other people should see. And the way that that gets done in email typically is CCing people, carbon copy. Like even the word is amazing, right? Yeah. It is truly what it is. Its roots are in many, many, many decades ago.
Yep.
And the problem with email and carbon is really the carbon copy problem. It's the fact that your inbox is actually a way for everybody else to carbon copy you with things they think you need to know. Yep. Not stuff that you need to know, and not stuff that the whole group needs to know or anything. It's a way for me to bug you. And that's why our inboxes are a mess. It goes, and we were talking earlier about this idea of the tragedy of the commons. Back in the 1700s, this economist who said, you know what, why are our commons always a mess? You go to any town and it's just a mess. There are cows doing their thing everywhere, there's garbage all over the place, chickens running crazy. And the reason is because if nobody owns something, everybody owns it. And so your inbox is owned by everybody that you give your email address to. Anytime they want, they can throw anything they want into it. And that's a problem for you. It's not a problem for me. Whoops, I'm sorry. It's not a problem for me, the person who's sending the email. It's great for me. And that's one of the fundamental tensions is I am much more important than you in my world.
Yep.
And so that causes me to do all sorts of things that makes your life hard. The organization is out there thinking something different, which is I don't really care about either of you guys, really. What I care about is what you're doing. Yep. And I want that stuff to be around. And so the organization...
And searchable and
findable. And searchable and findable. And so what does the organization do? What organizations always do. It says, I'm going to force you to work a certain way. Yeah. That's what we do. We force you to work away, and that makes you more efficient. And so they set up content management systems or portals and wikis and stuff like that and say, you have to go use this thing. And inevitably, it works differently than is in my interest. Yeah. Email's great. I work on a document, I send it to you, it's done, doesn't bother me, I don't have to do anything extra. And you're on the hook, and that's great, it's out of my life. A portal is, I gotta put it up here, I gotta think about who else might see this thing. Do I have to worry about whether it's kind of partly done or not? It's like this semi-private sort of state, and I'm uncomfortable. Yeah. Portal doesn't solve the problem. Portal solves the problem of me getting it to the entire organization. It doesn't solve the problem of this team of people that's trying to do something. And in the team, there's typically gonna be, like you and your buddy and the sneaker net, close, tight team members, and then there'll be one layer out, which is maybe your client or the account manager or whoever you're working with. And even in that layer, you guys are all pretty comfortable with everybody seeing everything. Yeah. The sausage making is totally fine. But that group is, the first group is maybe 2 to 5 to 7 people max. The second group is maybe 10, 20, 30 people. It's like your core group of coworkers. And then there's everybody else. And the problem with most collaboration technologies is they immediately leap to the everybody else problem. Yeah. And they sort of skip this initial problem, which email actually does a pretty good job of, right? Email, you CC the people in that little outer circle and you send emails to the people in the inner circle. Yeah. And that group is now pretty efficient compared to other ways of working, but the rest of the group gets nothing. And so what we're trying to do is say, all right, wait a minute, let's take email and desktop publishing and look at that. That's really about you. It's about you trying to get your individual work done. And then there's this other thing, which is like portals or wikis or team sites or everybody can see everything sort of thing. And that's
There's
really
a lot of competition in that space. So I think we're going to do some future shows about it. But I just saw Ross Mayfield, who runs Social Text, and he just announced a new suite this week, which is really interesting. Looks like a cross of a wiki and Twitter and Facebook all mixed together. Is now this?
So we're not doing that either.
Yeah.
So we're saying actually there's a problem in the middle, which is the email problem. The email, which is the group of people, the immediate core group and the group right around them, sort of extended team that need to work together closely to get work done, and that's where most of the work gets done. Publishing, getting it to so everybody, quote unquote, can see it, that's not. They're solved in a lot of different ways. Probably could be done better. Things like Facebook and Twitter and RSS and all those things make that better. But this inner problem is really hard to solve. And it's really hard to solve because it's in between everybody and me. It's this team. And in there, it has to solve the problems of each individual person without causing them to have to do extra work. And it needs to solve the problem of the group being able to find everything. And I could show you sort of, I can't show you how we're going to solve that yet. That's not a secret, but it'll be coming. But I can show you how these problems actually get created if you don't solve the whole thing.
Well, that's sort of why I find Adobe interesting to study. I've lived in the Valley and used your products for almost 30 years now. It's crazy. And following Adobe, you get to see the tectonic shifts in this industry, right? You saw the page description language in the laser printer and the first page maker in the 80s, and that morphed into Illustrator and Photoshop, which were graphic design tools. That morphed into Acrobat, which I was on the beta for in the mid-90s, where it was about getting your print documents onto the computer. You know, the beginnings, the internet was just starting to get there, and I don't think the Acrobat team really had a concept of what that we were going to be putting this stuff up online, and it was going to be a page. And talking to the team back then, they didn't have that much of a concept that we were going to be working together. But now we see like what you're working on, Acrobat.com, and you got bought in through the Macromedia merger, right? So you see how Adobe has shifted to respond to these things that are going on in our computer usage.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think that I can say this because I was acquired. Adobe is an incredibly humble company in a lot of ways. Like what Adobe does in the world is not as well understood or noticed by most people because we sort of stay out of the way. We're not trying to.
Like a lot of the fonts you see on the characters, or that was technology designed by Adobe, and nobody really thinks about that.
But it makes things better.
In fact, we don't even think about fonts anymore. I remember when fonts first came out, we were really interested in how fonts worked, and we were collecting fonts.
Totally.
And then we remember that? We really had to pay hundreds of dollars for a typeface, and now it's like they just come, you know?
No, it's like all these things, or it's the, can't remember what author it was, but it's sufficiently advanced technology just appears like magic. Maybe it was Arthur C. Clarke or Isaac Asimov.
How does that legacy affect what you guys are doing with Acrobat.com? Because I remember choosing Acrobat because it faithfully reproduced the print page. Because I worked at a magazine, and we would design pages, and we wanted them to look exactly online as they looked in print. Now that's not as big a deal anymore. It's more, can I work with somebody else to build something that can be shared online? You know,
which actually,
I'm not even thinking about the magazine most of the time, although I still write for a magazine, which is sort of funny. But
It actually, the idea of working with other people reintroduces the problem of being faithful in reproducing things.
How so?
Because it suddenly makes it important that you see the same thing that I see while we're working on it. Right? And why do a lot of people use PDFs? Well, there's a lot of different reasons, but the number one reason is because they want to share a document with someone else and know that they're going to be able to see the thing. And this includes people that are working in Microsoft Office tools, because there's no guarantee that the person's going to have the right tool to see that. In fact, it's highly unlikely. It's sort of like the
No, yeah, if I work on Windows and I send you a Word doc that was done with Tahoma maybe,
right.
and you're on a Mac,
right.
you're not going to see the document as I designed it, right? You're going to see it in some weird font, Helvetica or something, right?
Exactly.
Where if we're on PDF, I can make sure that you're going to see the fonts as I designed them, as I envisioned my document.
That's right, and it's not just Mac and Windows, although this problem gets worse as Macintosh is more successful. It's also different versions of the different products.
Supposedly it gets better. They have PDF built in, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, that's good, right? That is good for this problem. It's not necessarily good for the problem of actually creating the document together, but it is for sharing it, the publishing problem, like I was talking about before. And have you ever been in a group of people and the speaker says, hey, how many people have a birthday on this day? And it's always more people raising their hands than you think, right? And it's because we don't think about statistics very easily, very well. The problem of sharing documents with other people is the same thing. How many people do you think are on Office 2007?
Probably 10%.
Right, and so what does that mean? If you share with one other person, the chance of that one other person not being able to see it is 90%.
Yeah.
If you share with 2 other people, it's to the second power. So it very rapidly becomes unlikely that people are going to be, very likely someone won't be able to see it, regardless of the format.
I run into that all the time. I'm using Office 2007. My editor doesn't use it.
Right.
So we're actually switching online tools to solve that problem because
exactly.
At least we can get, we don't have to worry about saving in the right format or making sure he has the right up-to-date copy, right?
Yeah, and that's a big part of the reason that building collaboration software is hard. Yeah. Because, like I said, I'm greater than you. I'm more important than you. Everybody knows that. So if I'm going to try to get you to do something, it's got to be in your...
The Twitters are having a lot of fun with that statement.
Good. Great. Excellent. No, well, how about I'll turn it around. You're better than me. No. I don't care. Either way, it's reciprocal. So neither of us like each other. I don't know. No, but this problem of everybody knows that it's hard to get other people to do things for me. Yeah. And it's even harder to get somebody to do something for the whole group. If that were true, I'm going to have to do it. A lot of the problems in the economy in the United States today wouldn't be there. Yeah. If everybody acted in the interest of everyone else, life would be very different. That's not the way it works. Yeah. And everybody knows that. So if you're trying to get somebody else to do something, you want to do it the way that they're used to doing it. Yeah. So collaboration software does require people to change. It does, and we know that. But
what's the usage going on with Acrobat? I would imagine as the fuel prices are going up and as the airline, I hate flying. I gotta be honest. I have 100,000 miles this year, and my goal is to cut that in half next year.
Nice.
And I'm going to use tools like Acrobat.com. Right. Are you finding that people are using online tools a lot more now because they don't want to fly or they don't want to travel even across town to work with somebody?
Our growth in general is so fast that it's difficult to discern any particular trends. Mm-hmm. We have growth rates, depending on which measure, of like 500 to 5,000% a year from a reasonably big base out of the gate. And a lot of that's because we're actually providing access to these services for free. Yep. They're from Adobe, they're good, and they're available from Reader, from the Adobe Reader, which is distributed to millions of people every week. Yeah. So lots of people.
Isn't that crazy?
It's amazing.
To know that millions of people are downloading your software every week.
Yeah. I don't know how. I'm assuming that there's some geeks in the audience, but people who've ever read Snow Crash, so the whole idea of memes and the ideas that get spread through the world. I was talking to the software developer that built our Air app. He's a young guy in his early 20s. Our Air application is a desktop version of Acrobat.com, which is typically viewed through a browser by most people. And the Air application of Acrobat.com is included with Reader 9. Yep. So you get this desktop access to this very powerful set of collaboration tools. And I was like, do you realize that words that you typed, ideas that you had, are going to be published to hundreds of millions of people over the next few years? It's unbelievable. And that hundreds of millions of eyeballs are going to see it, and brains are going to touch the stuff that you did. Yeah. And it's incredible. Can you imagine being a 25-year-old and you get to do that? I mean, the Gutenberg press was nothing compared to the way some of these things happen now. So anyway.
How about we see?
Yeah, let me show you. I think it's probably good to show you a couple of things.
How important is video? Because I know that when I use Acrobat.com, I use a little bit of video in there.
That's right.
And that wasn't possible in Acrobat 1.0, right?
Yeah.
Acrobat 1.0 was all about getting those page maker. InDesign or PageMaker, you get a static document that doesn't change, doesn't morph, doesn't have video, doesn't have interactivity. Over the Acrobat lifetime, I see more and more of this interactivity added in, surveying capabilities and other things. Right?
Yeah, so it's definitely I would say on the video, you are definitely greater than me, just about everybody else.
Yeah.
And the main reason for that is that not everybody has a video camera.
Yeah. Although that's changing pretty fast.
That is changing very fast, and we're noticing that. And so maybe I'll start with that part of Acrobat.com first, and show you a little. I don't have my camera with me as example, but I guess if we go to the screen here, I can. This is the Acrobat.com homepage. So I'm looking at it in a browser, Firefox.
It's not working. All right.
It's not working. Okay. Yeah. Well, we can. Let me try one more time here. Here it comes.
Yeah. Are you able to see it now, Rock? I'm talking to my producer.
Nice. Well, just let me know when it comes back. Because there's one other thing that I wanted to mention, which is that in this, I've talked a bunch about it needs to be good for both people. And you're talking about emailing documents around and that sort of thing. So I'll give you an example. Using Buzzword, which is our online word processor.
Yeah. And Acrobat just acquired that, less than a year ago, wasn't it?
It was less than a year ago. Wow. We acquired the company Virtual Ubiquity. And group of people out in Boston who, or actually Newton, and they're incredible people. Their designer, our designer, Robbie Shaver, who's responsible for Acrobat.com, anybody who's seen it, he's amazing. And the lead engineer, Mike Crayley, for anybody who's sort of collaborative software aficionado, he was called mayor of Agenda Town.
Now, how does it differ from like Zoho, which we've had here on this show,
sure,
or Google Docs, which we'll have on in a future show?
Right.
Because it looks quite a bit different than those tools.
That's right. So it's different from each of them in a slightly different way.
Okay.
We're different from Google Docs mostly in this fidelity question, this idea that you want your stuff to look good.
Yeah.
Right? You expect it to look a certain way. If you create a table that's laid out this way, you want everybody else to see it. And you actually want pretty powerful control over the layout and the fonts. You want the fonts to look good. You want to know how many pages it is. You want to know basically how people are going to experience this document.
Yeah, they're not able to see it, so
okay, all right, well, I can. You should go see it, www.acrobat.com. It's
we'll
free.
do some demos in the after-show party because I can aim my camera at your screen.
Great,
so we'll get a demo on kite.tv after the show, but let's just keep talking about what Buzzword.
So Buzzword is this online word processor.
Yeah.
I personally hate that idea. It's actually an online collaborative application for creating documents, but that doesn't have a shorthand yet. So if someone wants to come up with one, put a TM on it and we'll use it.
Yeah.
Anyway, Buzzword, we use it for all of our documents. I was going to show you my personal organizer of all my Buzzword documents.
Yeah.
I have about 400 documents in there right now from probably about 50 different people. That's too many. Tragedy of the Commons. Get to that in a second. But we used it for the initial press release for Acrobat.com. So anybody out there that works in marketing or has ever been involved with the process of launching anything knows that a press release is like a highly collaborative, very high stress sort of document.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to have some input. Unlike most documents, it's not just one author or two authors. There's usually 4, 5, 6, 7 authors, literally, people scripting different words.
Yeah.
And for this press release, we were actually able to get a pretty good measure of how much efficiency something like Buzzword adds into the whole process. Because we could see how many different edits people made and how many different comments people made, and you can translate that roughly into email and email attachments.
Yeah.
So what happened with using Buzzword is a group of people, we're going to work on it. Our PR manager sent out one email with her initial draft, sort of an outline, to those 10 people. So one email times 10 people. It takes a minute or two to read any email.
Yep.
People click on a link, go through, and we started working on it. Late at night was writing some stuff. Early the next morning, because my partner, Rick Treitman, is out in Boston. He was the founder of Virtual Ubiquity. He gets up very early in the morning, our time, starts working on it. I get into work. His comments are there. Our boss comes online, Rob Tarkoff. He makes a few comments. The PR manager comes in. Everybody's sort of changing and commenting. And I was going to show you how many.
Let's try one more time. They said to reset your display so that it might come out.
Yeah,
let's give it one
my
more.
computer, it looks like it's hung. Actually, it might be my fault.
Yeah.
All right, bummer. So anyway, there was 10 major versions of the document, which you could see by looking at the version history. There's a really cool little version history that lets you go back and forth through the lifespan of the document. 10 major versions. That would have been 10 email attachments that by nature you would have sent to all 10 people.
Yeah.
Right? Because everybody needs to know about it. There were also about 60 different comments from 10 different people, most of which probably would have been email too. They could have even been an email attachment using comment and review in Word. That is just a mess.
Yeah.
So the sum total of time that would have been spent just sending the emails around, and the minute it takes me to even read it and decide if I need to do anything or not, was about 6 or 7 hours.
Yeah.
That's a lot of time. A half hour per person is a significant amount of time, especially when it's time sensitive and you're trying to get people to do stuff.
Yeah.
With Buzzword, none of that happened.
Yeah.
And the press release was great. The final review sailed right through. We worked together. Not only did we save time, but we got to a good idea much faster because of that. Because we were able to spend much less time just trying to coordinate. We didn't have any meetings to talk about it until the thing was totally done and it was going through its executive review process. So that's a really big savings. And we have a saying, we need to be 10 times better.
Now, when you do one of those
successful.
documents, can you publish to a blog, or do you have to then copy and paste into a blog tool like WordPress? Or
so that's a great question. So we're focusing heavily on this problem of this small group of people working with a slightly larger group of people, and then finding ways to get things in, say bring import from Word or eventually PowerPoint or Excel, and export out or publish out. Right now, our primary publishing process, not surprising, is PDF.
Yeah.
So you can publish things as PDF. Acrobat.com has a PDF conversion offering, so you can actually upload any document that we can understand. There's a list on the site. We'll turn it into a PDF for you, and then you can share it with anybody.
Yeah.
And you
can see Adobe's bias towards that fidelity.
That's right.
Although I know on the online world that if you're not in HTML, you're not going to get read, and unless there's some reason to read the HTML and then click a link and open up the PDF to see a more beautiful document or something like that.
Exactly, and so we have we're solving that problem 2 ways now, and we're going to get much better in the future. So the 2 ways we solve it now is you can save a Buzzword document as HTML, export it basically as HTML, and then if you know how to publish, you can, or copy and paste the HTML into your blog or whatever. So it's not great. If it's a document where you care about the formatting, you can actually embed that document directly in your blog or a wiki or a web page, so that you get a full fidelity preview of the document that people can then actually download the source document if you want to let them do that.
Yeah.
So those 2 ways are ways that we're doing it, are offerings of the very early beta. It's only been out for 3 months.
Yeah.
But longer term, we do want to be part of people's broader publishing workflows.
Yeah.
I use Buzzword because I just love the user interface. It's simple.
Yeah.
It's an interesting outgrowth of this change in the way that people are working, that you can not only change the way they work together, but you can make their experience of doing their own work better.
Yeah.
And
do you think that Buzzword is going to? Is there an API that like WordPress could build Buzzword in as a UI to the blog tool?
So not today.
Yeah.
And those are the sorts of things I'm talking about this publishing out sort of metaphor.
Okay. Because when I was in Nancy Pelosi's office, her PR person was just working right in WordPress, and I know WordPress is pretty crude in terms of the tools that you can use to aggregate pictures and other things. And it would be neat to have the kind of, what you see is what you get kind of tool that Buzzword offers you. We have like 30 seconds. It's cranking on. What's next for Adobe? Because we saw Adobe in the last year buy Buzzword. Are you going to buy other suite tools and make a real Office suite with a presentation tool?
I really like my job.
Yeah. You're not going to leak here on international TV?
No, yeah. But I also am really
because there's some really great presentation tools out there that are like SlideRocket or SlideShare, and there's some really great like Zoho has a whole suite, a business suite.
Yeah, so I could tell you, I mean, what we're going to be focused on is solving this problem of people working together. The sort of the marketing way of saying it is these knowledge workers. We want knowledge workers, people that spend their time creating documents, working with other people, to be able to work the way that they work today, only much more efficiently when they work with other people. And so documents and stuff are all coming.
It's awesome. Thank you for spending half an hour. Sorry we couldn't get your computer working, but stick around and we'll get you a demo on the after show party.
Okay, great.
So join us for next week's show, where Guy Goldstein of PageOnce will meet with us and talk about their productivity application on iPhones in particular. Please join us for the after show party on kite.tv/Scobalizer. And thanks for joining us today on WorkFast TV. Now get back to work. That was fun.